Hello boys and girls, Bored now back with you. On this video I will be talking about the first episode of the second series of the HBO / BBC co-production version of His Dark Materials. So this is, start of season 2. So it's been a year since the first series, and you can find all of my reviews of that first series on the channel. I did the whole thing, and I was quite surprised. I was pleasantly surprised by it. I remember it having a bit of a slow start, and I wasn't quite sure about it at first. Because I'm not a big fantasy guy. I'd read the first novel in the series, in this trilogy, which the first series was based on, a long time ago, so I don't really remember that much about it. I remember it being a bit of a struggle, but anyway, I'm not really a big fantasy guy, especially this sort of fantasy, so I wasn't really sure if I was going to be that keen on the first series, but it really surprised me. Daphne Keane is excellent as Lyra. You've obviously got Ruth Wilson on fine sort of icy form, and strong supporting cast as well, and Marie Duff, bunch of other people. And the production values were just excellent. The visual effects and the storytelling for the most part was good as well. So yeah, I was surprised how much I enjoyed season 1. So I'm back here for series 2. And so this is obviously this is their take on the second novel. So they're going to be doing all 3 novels. And the sort of big sort of cliffhanger or hook for this season at the end of the last season is that both Lyra and the character of Will, who we were introduced to quite late on in the first series, they've both gone into this new kind of universe, this new world that they've gone through sort of separately. So before the start of this series, they haven't met yet, but Will, like Lyra, has a certain destiny, has a certain special gift which he's kind of unaware of, but which is linked to his dad's past, basically. And so to try and escape the issues and the pressure put on his family at the end last season, he's left home, and he's now gone through a portal. He followed a cat, bizarrely, and we also find out in this episode then like Lyra was at a boarding school in Oxford, but obviously in a different dimension, a different location. Will is from Oxford, the Oxford that we know, basically. So, but they're both from Oxford, but in different locations. And you've got that link between them as well, and that kind of gets brought up as a thing that they can tap into, to try and get knowledge. But the big storyline in this episode is that they've both gone to this new location, this different sort of like universe and world, and it's a place which has been affected by Lord Asriel and his experiment with dust, and sort of the fallout and consequences. And as a result, it's a very deserted place. All the adults have even basically affected, or they've sort of cleared. Hear about these characters or these creatures called the spectres in this episode, and we find out, and this is pretty to think about anyway, pretty graphic for this sort of show. It does go dark at times, actually, to be fair, but we find out then they suck the life out of adults, basically. So at one point, Lila comes across a guy who's basically had his insides sucked out of him. And the kind of catch with this is then we're told that that it's only when they come of age, so when they officially become adults, and they have the life sucked out of them. So sort of, I guess it's like a warning to Lila and Will, although they're both pretty young. I think Will's meant to be the older of the two, but anyway, I think that's just one of these sort of warnings where, like, the youngsters have been left behind, but it's almost this sort of thing, putting them on notice that one day, when they come of age, when they become adults, that the Spectres could be after them. So that's the kind of A plot in the episode. The B plot is that you've got Miss Coulter, Ruth Wilson, as I said, on fantastic form again. She's trying to kind of get power, cling on to some sort of power with the Cardinals, who are obviously very concerned about like their experiments and breaking out and getting into the mainstream, and then the stuff with obviously Azrael's experiments. So they're desperate to contain it, desperate to find Lyra or find Azrael and try and put a lid on it. So obviously slip of the tongue there, that was close. Miss Coulter, I should say. Boy, that was close. She's trying to. I'm rather flustered now. She's trying to obviously get control of the situation. She's trying to stay relevant in the card rules. So I think there's almost like a metaphor to do with like masculinity and stuff there, and a woman kind of on the outside but trying to fight her way in this very like traditionally masculine setup. And again, Ruth Wilson, very icy, has a lot of presence in this episode. We see that she almost has to resort to being manipulative, but she essentially wants to get on the inside and be controlling things. And she does this by kind of, persuading them to interview this witch, who they've captured, who they think has information about what's going on, basically. And we see, Miss Coulter having to use her sexuality kind of thing at times to manipulate this group of guys, and tried to be charming. So I think those are the main two plots anyway, and then there's a little bit with Lee. He visits Sarah, and that's so that he can have get a spell to try and protect Lila, basically. So she gives it over. And then there's kind of a subplot where this one particular witch is demanding, hey, I think it's Caitlin or something, or Katerina, something like that, the witch who has been like kidnapped and being held, and the one who Miss Coulter like interviewed, not really the word, torture sort of thing, to try and get information. So this one particular witch is demanding that the other witches like go and try and rescue Katerina, basically, really. Whereas they've got one particular focus, which is Lyra and what's going on there. She's more no, we've got to go and help her sister. We've got to try and stop this. And she kind of goes off on her own at one point, and she's a little bit of a shady character in the way I think she uses her magic. But anyway, that's sort of the episode. I thought it was okay. I thought it was a solid enough start to the season. I think, uh, obviously, a lot of this is setup stuff, but I mean, I think a lot of the things that it was doing well in the first season, it's still doing well in this episode. As I said, Daphne Keener's Lyra still very much on point. Ruth Wilson, very good once again. It's always a joy. She's a good actress anyway, but I think particularly when she's playing like these sort of icy, manipulative type roles. But I think she also brings enough of a human side as well, enough of like an emotional side as well. Obviously, there's the whole. She's sort of a bit conflicted because, of course, Lyra is her daughter, and there was a little bit of a hint at the end of last season with her exchange with Azrael, then she might be turning over a new leaf. She might be like edging more towards the good side, but I'm not sure now. I think the event of this episode maybe contradicts that, but it still could be something that happens at some point. But yeah, Ruth Wilson very very good in that part. The direction is really good, and it sets up some interesting ideas. I do have a couple of concerns with this first episode, where it might just feel like a lesser version of the first season. I think sometimes with the middle part of a trilogy, it can fall a little bit flat. It can just kind of feel a bit like the bit in the middle. So the first part, maybe you go for a bit of bit more momentum. You're getting off to a strong start, and then obviously the end, the third part, is the dramatic sort of close to the whole thing. So sometimes the bit in the middle, if you like, can suffer a bit because of that. But yeah, there's a couple of problems. I think one is that I'm not convinced by Will yet. I think he seems a bit bland. I'm not sure the actor is the best. Maybe he'll grow into the part more, and I'll care a bit more about like his thing with Lyra. I think they're hinting a bit at sort of a romance, which I don't know if I would be up for or not, but we'll see how it goes. But in any case, yeah, I didn't really notice the actor being that bad last season, but it might just be because he only had a small role and he was introduced quite late in the season. Obviously, he's in quite a lot of this episode, and there's some okay character beats and the stuff with Lyra, because one thing that gets brought up in this episode is that some of their differences, because they're from different worlds, and I guess it never dawned on me that Lyra, there's stuff that she's not going to know. So at one point there's quite a nice little scene where he sort of teaches her how to cook eggs, and that's something she's not been introduced to in her like world. So then she actually cooks him eggs like for breakfast the next morning, and it's this sort of joke where he's like, well, you have added something to it, and the joke being and yeah, she's kind of made a bit of a mess of it, but anyway, there's stuff like that, and some of it was okay, some of it I thought was a bit forced, and But I guess it's adding to the mythology and the universe because, yeah, it never really sort of dawned on me than where Lyra comes from. Such basic stuff wouldn't necessarily exist, sort of thing, because showers, for example, don't exist in her universe. So there's kind of a joke about it. Yeah, it's basically a bath standing up, and that sort of appeals to her. But yeah, for a lot of the episode, there's this awkward like chemistry between them where they kind of get off on the wrong foot. They don't really trust each other. They obviously like bump into each other near the start of the episode, and it's sort of made a big deal of the fact that Will doesn't understand the whole demon thing. He doesn't understand why Lyra has a talking animal, and likewise she doesn't understand why he doesn't have a demon. So there's stuff like that which I think is done quite well. They meet these other characters in like this abandoned city space. They're a couple of like teenage girls or pre-teens, and you only really get a bit of them. They sort of explain the whole thing about the Spectre and why they've been like left behind by their parents, and that they are looking after one another basically. So again, it's this idea of this, the teens in the show, or the young people in the show, actually having to grow up very fast, having to like be the adults almost in their lives. So that stuff kind of goes along with a lot of the themes. And there's a scene quite near the end of the episode where I can't remember their names now, the two girls, but they are actually like bullying like one of the demons and kind of, yeah, being quite nasty towards Will, and then Lyra comes back with another like bigger demon to kind of chase them off. Angelica was one of the names. I can't remember the other girl. Yeah, I'm not sure about those characters yet. I think it's always a thing with a second series, or sometimes, because it does feel like obviously some of the same characters are there. The core sort of there mostly, although so far we haven't seen like the adults, the other kind of adults, like the Anne-Marie Duff character and a couple of the others, and so I'm not sure yet really if I'm going to be that into like these two girls, for example. They seem like they could be a bit kind of bratty and annoying, but there's only been a bit of them, to be fair, so far, so I can't really say too much. And I don't know yet about Will and the whole thing with Lyra, and there was some good stuff between them. I just don't know if they've got the chemistry, or if, as I said, the guy playing Will, I'm not sure he's that good, but we'll see. He might surprise me as we go along. And like basically at the end of the episode, Lyra like discovers, because she's been playing with the idea of whether to like use her compass again, which her demon's been trying to talk her into. And she says at one point that it sort of tells the truth, but it doesn't tell you everything, so it does leave sort of gaps. But her demon talks her into like looking into Will, his background, because she doesn't know if she can trust him, and so she does that, and she realizes he's a murderer, which when she first says it, you're like, oh, okay, so we go in this direction. But then she realises, but he's a good murderer, which is sort of a funny statement. But anyway, it's obviously relating to the way he had to defend himself at the end of last season and when he escaped. So that's sort of fine. And she realises something else about him, and then we cut to Will, who's like out in the street, and something appears behind him, and that's kind of when we cut to credits. So something tall. It looked like it could be a plant or something, or maybe some sort of a creature. Where I couldn't really tell, to be honest, but that's kind of the cliffhanger of this episode. I think the only other thing I wasn't so keen about in the episode is, apart from Will, is some of the stuff with the witches wasn't great. It was a little bit hokey and a bit cheesy, just because you've got the scenes with Ruth Wilson's Miss Cotter, like questioning this one witch, and it's this sort of form of torture, and those scenes themselves are really good, because Wilson's really going for it and being very kind of icy and kind of, intense and creepy, but she's like slowly peeling off what appears to be skin off the witch to try and get answers. But it's kind of like, just, I don't know, some sort of like almost like tree-like skin sort of thing. It's quite weird, but anyway, we see it, and it cuts around it because obviously this show. There have been some dark moments, but it probably doesn't go quite that dark, so we sort of cut around it. But the idea is that she's like torturing her, I should say, trying to get answers. But later on, there's like this awkward sort of cut where it's cutting in between the scenes, where, as I said, this other witch is like flying to try and get her, and it's cutting between the two because she's in danger of like giving up information, and then the witch like suddenly appears on the airship and rescues her and kind of uses her powers, and it's almost presenting this other witch, even though obviously you can appreciate her like saving her fellow witch, and obviously you're kind of opposed to the Cardinal and his people. I think just her actions and the fact that she goes against like Sarah and the other witches, I think it almost sets her up as kind of a villain, or at least as someone who maybe gets a bit carried away with her powers, whereas they're all kind of using their powers for like honourable things. So you get the impression it could be a bit of a plot with this character, but anyway, she saves her, and the whole thing about the fallout is that when she's trying to escape, she basically, I didn't see quite what she did, maybe stabs the Cardinal or something, and this basically plays into Mrs. Coater's hands because she like realizes and takes the chance, because the Cardinal's in like critical condition, and so they're waiting for like medical attention. So it's touch and go. I mean, he could potentially die. He's certainly in bad shape and in no sort of shape to like carry out his duties. So Ruth Wilson, I should stop calling that, but Mrs. Cotter like kind of steps in and like basically gently persuades like one of the other like lead cardinals. He like persuades her then maybe she should take over for the time being. So again, I enjoy that stuff. It was just the stuff with the witches, or that particular witch, and her saving Katerina, which was a bit off. That wasn't great. So that's the episode basically. It's solid stuff, as I said. Obviously, it's only a first episode, so we'll see how some of this stuff played out. But it was very watchable, and it sort of went by quite quickly. It didn't really drag, so I guess that's always a good sign. But yeah, that's the first episode of the second season of His Dark Materials. So I'm going to be doing these one a week. It airs Sunday night in the UK on BBC. It's also HBO, as I said, so that's in the States, and we'll see how it goes. It'll be interesting to see if this first season can live up to, or second season can live up to the first season. As I said, I thought the first season had a bit of a slow start, so I'm not really too concerned at the moment. But we'll see how it goes. But yeah, let me know your thoughts in the comments below. What did you think of this first episode? What do you expect in the season moving forward? I think there's seven episodes this time, and if you've read the books, what do you think so far of what they've done with them? And yeah, let me know about the second book and any changes so far. But anyway, I'll be back this time next week, or roughly this time next week, with the second episode of this season of His Dark Materials. Thanks for listening. Like and subscribe if you're new to the channel. You can ding the bell on YouTube to get any notifications when a video goes live, or if I do quite regular live streams, so when I go live for that as well. But thanks for listening. See you guys soon. Goodbye.